Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ryan at SFS bringing to you a little bit of story time. Now, this is a true story, and I believe it will be jam-packed with valuable insight. Back in the winter of 2014, I had decided to go out on my own and start my own staffing and recruiting agency while I had a young family sitting at home and $0 of income. At the time, my wife did not work. We literally had no other means of supporting ourselves. It was the most brutal and severe case of sink or swim that you can ever imagine. I did not have the luxury of the option to fail or the option to take my time to figure things out. And then here's the bigger problem. I actually didn't know anything about how to get clients at the time. It's not like I had left some other agency and taken all the clients with me. Didn't do that. I had zero relationships, zero past successes, zero knowledge about the client acquisition process, zero leads, zero idea about what I should specialize in, and zero things I could leverage to help kickstart my business. The more I think about it, the more I realize how desperate, hopeless, and reckless of a situation I was in. And I think it was that utter hopelessness that motivated me to fail extremely quickly and also figure things out extremely quickly. Failing fast helps us learn fast, and that's exactly what I did. And a lot of the things that I'm going to tell you is not what I'm recommending that you do. I repeat, I'm not necessarily recommending that you do these things. The whole reason I'm making this video is so that you don't have to go through what I did to figure out what I had to learn to succeed. At the same time, I wouldn't trade that experience for the world because it's what taught me what I know now, and it's what has fueled me to keep going and also appreciate where I'm at in life at this stage. But when I started out, when I was in the trenches in Hungary, I was going door to door to door, literally. I was a door-to-door salesman. That's not what a typical recruiter does, and that's not what this game is all about. And again, it's not what I'm suggesting that you do. I just want you to be able to skip right to the insights that I gained. Before I got into recruitment, I was so naive about the job market that I actually thought I couldn't get a job anywhere else. Yeah, that's what I thought at the time. I thought there were no jobs. I was in a big city. I thought there were no jobs. But as soon as I got into recruitment, I realized anybody can get a job and jobs are absolutely everywhere. Before that, I actually thought there were none. So I settled for a door-to-door sales job selling water heaters. I'm not kidding. Here's the crazy part. I got really good at it. I was actually good at selling water heaters. Can you imagine? I'm not really a salesy. I'm not really an outgoing type of person. I'm the last person you would think would be successful at something like this. So you can't imagine what I had to do to strategize in order to become good at selling a water heater. Now, this is a sale that is completely manufactured from the ground up every time you go to the door. Okay, there's no flyers that come out beforehand. There's no catalogs for water heaters. There's no websites. There's no promotions. Nobody's waking up thinking, man, I really want a water heater today. It's an absolutely crazy proposition in the first place, okay? But after I did it and I figured it out, I then knew that absolutely anything was possible. And so after that, I definitely knew I could sell jobs to people and people to jobs. And, that's really what it is that we're doing here. If you think that you're getting into the staffing and recruiting business to help people only, you should get out right now. Yes, you can help people, but you're really only going to help a very small percentage of people. And those are usually the people that don't really need your help. On the other hand, if you want to help yourself and your family and make a lot of money, then you're in the right place. So now, fast forward to 2014, starting my own recruiting business, no idea how to get any clients. So what did I do? Well, the first thing I did is I went back to what I knew, and I knew I could talk to people if I went door to door. So that's what I did. Quick reminder. I'm not suggesting that you do this, okay? This is not a recommendation. I'm just telling you how things started for me. Because knowing what I know now, I know that this is not an efficient way to get business. But it led me to an extremely valuable aha moment that springboarded very quick success, and that aha moment could help you in your endeavors. So let me tell you what happened. The first thing I did is I started driving around these like industrial parks that happen to be in my area. I thought, let me just go directly to where I know there's a number of companies all sort of congregated in one spot and I can just go and hit them one after another. So that's what I did. I started by going in the front door and talking to gatekeepers. And what I mean by a gatekeeper is like the front receptionist or whoever was sitting at that front desk. And what I quickly found out was that this method pretty much never worked. Okay, we call these people gatekeepers because they're trained to guard the gate and they're trained to turn people away who are not supposed to be there. So I was going around pitching to gatekeepers, leaving my business card behind. And it was essentially a wasted pitch and a wasted piece of paper because they did not care. They were not going to pass along my information. And it was basically falling on deaf ears. Now, remember, this was way before I was properly positioned in the market. I didn't have any branding that made any sense to anybody. I didn't have messaging that resonated with anyone to any special degree. So after kind of hitting my head against the wall with this method a few times, I started thinking of new ways to get in the door. I would say this is where the crazy magic moments started to happen. I tried something, I would say, pretty outside the box. And again, I gotta say it again, I'm not recommending that you do this. In fact, there's a small chance that you could go to jail or get arrested if you do what I did these days. Who knows? But essentially what I did is I was like sneaking in the back door into these companies. So here was the method. Just think for a second about where there's usually an unlocked door for any building, okay? At the loading dock. Sure enough, I would drive around to the back, I'd park my car, and then I would look and I'd try to find some kind of activity. You'd usually find a few people outside coming in and out. I would always start there. I would start by talking to those people. These were kind of like the low-hanging fruit. And my goal was to just gather a little bit of information that I could then go and use on the inside. So I wanted to get these folks to give me some kind of name or some kind of background information that I could start with. I'd usually ask them things like whether or not they thought there was a lot of hiring going on, if they knew who the hiring manager was. My overall goal was just to get a sense for whether things were busy, whether things were growing, whether there was some kind of hiring a lot of people, and most of all, to get a name that I could use on the inside or that I could go looking for on the inside. And usually I was able to get that pretty easily. So then once I got in, I would essentially ask other people that I found inside to lead me to this person that I learned about on the outside, usually, ideally to the manager that I just learned about. Let's assume, and it often was, that the name was like Dave. So the goal would kind of be like to act like I own the place or at least like I was supposed to be there. And I would just kind of walk around asking people for Dave. So I'd be like, hey, have you seen Dave? Do you know where Dave is? They might say, oh yeah, I saw him. He was over there, or he should be in his office or whatever. Or I'd say, oh, perfect. Where's his office? They'd tell me it's just up the stairs, down the hall. Cool. Thanks. So I would just keep doing this until eventually I found Dave, or I'd find my way to Dave's office. And honestly, I can't remember what I used to say the first few times I did this. It was probably a pretty terrible pitch, but after a while, I came to the realization that almost every company was going to be interested in people who had experience from the same industry that they were in. So from sitting down in these impromptu meetings, and by the way, I was actually thrown out of these places surprisingly few times in retrospect. I can only remember maybe one or two times where they actually asked me to leave and kind of escorted me out. I came to the realization from these meetings that every hiring manager was always looking for a particular skill set, whether they had a job posted or not. If they were in any sort of business that was either like evergreen or had any sort of momentum, there's always some type of talent that they were on the lookout for. And I just needed to figure out exactly who that was. And these were the meetings where they would tell me who that was. It almost seemed like they respected how I had infiltrated their company. They were surprisingly open with me at this point, and they went ahead and told me exactly how I could work with them. This is what it kind of sounded like. They would say something along the lines of, if you could find me X, I will always be interested. If you can find me an engineer with this skill set, if you can find me a machine operator who has worked on this type of machine, if you find me someone who has experience in hand tools from XYZ fabrication company, if you find me an accountant from the building materials industry, if you find me whatever it was. And I remember thinking, really? So all I have to do is go and find you X and you'll want to hire them and pay my fee. Yes, you got it. This might sound to you like common sense. It was an absolute revelation for me because all I had to do was go and find them what they wanted and they would work with me. So here's what I did. I actually went a few steps further. I noticed that there were a bunch of companies in the same industry. And when I drove through those industrial parks, I noticed that it was kind of a hotbed of what I came to learn were like architectural building envelope companies. These are like the companies that work on the exterior of large commercial buildings. I started realizing that the pitch to these companies was pretty easy. All I needed to know about was the existence of their competitors. And I just had to mention that pretty much in my pitch. And my pitch was only like 2 lines and it worked every time. One day I walked into this company not knowing how big it was. Turned out it was one of the largest companies in this niche worldwide, a multi-billion-dollar company with facilities all over the world in like every major city. And I walked in and I asked around for the right person. And indeed, his name really was Dave. And sure enough, Dave was willing to speak with me. And here's what I said. I said something along the lines of, the reason I stopped by is because I just happen to have a few workers ready to go to work and they have experience from, and then I mentioned a well-known competitor of this company. And then I said, just wondering if you could use, some of these folks on your team. Here's what Dave said. Come back tomorrow at 9 a.m. and let's meet about it. And sure enough, I was definitely there right at 9 a.m. I had the meeting with Dave and that meeting changed my life. This company was massive. Dave onboarded me as a vendor. He gave me a tour of the facility. He told me exactly what he was looking for. He told me exactly how many people he was going to need from week to week. He told me how they'd have to be onboarded. He ran through the list of everything that he would need and that I would essentially need to know. Told me about the pay structure. We worked out a fee agreement. And all of a sudden, I had an extremely real company at that point. This was the type of client that I could build a business around. I'm not recommending that you build a business around just one client, but I could have easily lived off of the business that came from just this account. So every single week, I pretty much knew exactly how many people I needed to get. But then as the fulfillment became more and more successful, suddenly they wanted more from me. And that was actually a really good thing because every time they wanted more, it just meant more and more revenue and profit. And every single week they wanted more people and people liked working there. They would stay, they'd work there indefinitely for months and months and years sometimes. And that was a good thing. That essentially became passive income for me. And then we grew to have such a good relationship that sometimes Dave would find people on his own. And Dave would be like, hey, I want these people to come in through you. So what that meant when this happened was that I was going to get paid for these people that I didn't even have to go and find myself just by putting them on the payroll. And here's what else happened. Every time I tried to market to another company in this niche, it worked. I was batting close to 1,000. In fact, every time I picked up the phone to call a new prospect, I was almost certain I was getting a new client. I remember I'd actually tell people in my office, I'd get them to gather around and I'd say, hey, watch, I'm going to get us a new client right now. And being from like cold calling backgrounds themselves, they didn't really believe that was possible. You could see sort of the look of disbelief on their faces. I would literally pick up the phone in front of the whole office and just get a new client right before their eyes with one call. So you might be thinking, why did this work so well? Because everything about our brand, everything about our service fit for this type of niche. I built a business around the types of companies that we were servicing. I built it for them and for their competitors. So as soon as I picked up the phone and I talked about the types of companies I was working with, the types of people that I had, as soon as I would start speaking sort of industry lingo that I had picked up and that they had never heard another recruiter speak before, the hook was set. The deal was essentially already decided. They were already sold. I didn't have to do any big presentations. I didn't have to show up with any fancy pitch decks. I didn't have to do any requests for proposals, or I didn't have to negotiate. Everything that came after me setting the hook was just merely a formality. Again, why did this work so well? Here's why. It's that people want what their neighbors have. And similarly, companies want what their competitors have. And since I could accurately represent that the competitors had me already, they had our business, they were working with our company, every other company in this industry also wanted to work with us by virtue of knowing this fact. I was an industry insider with a unique network of people that they needed to tap into. I knew about their machines, I knew about their technology, I knew about the skill sets, I could talk just a little bit of shop, enough to get by. And so these companies really didn't have a choice. Once I spoke to them, once they became aware of our service, it just didn't make any sense for them to work with anyone else. Why would they? That would be an insane decision. I was so well positioned in the niche that it didn't make any economic sense to not work with me and work with our business. So I essentially forced them to work with our company in a sense. And so I was able to sign up as many clients as I wanted. I just had to first make sure that my company was ready to service them. For that, I had to make sure that we scaled internally enough to be able to find the right people for them. I had to make sure that we had the systems in place to source enough people. I had to make sure that we had enough recruiting consultants to manage the people that we sourced. At this point, there was way too much for me to manage on my own. I had to learn how to scale the business. Now, keep in mind that this niche was relatively high volume and the placement turnaround was extremely quick. It wasn't something where I had to send in a resume and wait for the hiring manager to maybe get back to the HR coordinator and wait for the HR coordinator to coordinate interview times with multiple stakeholders and set up an interview, wait for the candidate to get back to me, then go through this same process 3 or 4 more times for multiple interview stages. The beauty of this niche is that I didn't have to bother with these long sales cycles that were extremely unpredictable. Every time my client told me that they wanted somebody, that was going to result in revenue pretty much no matter what. So a lot of times the way these orders would come in is just like emails or phone calls, and they'd be like, yeah, send in 7, send in 10 more of X for Monday. We're going to need 4 more of those for Wednesday. These were literally the emails and the orders that I would get. So just to work out some easy math, let's just say we're making $5,000 off of every placement. That's pretty conservative. If I'm placing like 7 a week for just one client, things are adding up pretty quickly. Because after a while, we had like 25 clients. So if we just do the math, just pretend we're doing about 7 placements a week, although within the year was quite a bit more than that. It's pretty easy math. 7 times 5,000 equals 35,000 a week. 35,000 a week is 140,000 per month. 140,000 per month is 1.6 million for the year. Not only that, but this is just like counting fairly low and mid-level type of roles. These clients are often giving us also like manager level roles, more senior roles, executive roles, and then the fees on those are going to be much higher. So in addition to these ongoing placements that we're making every single week, we're also adding on larger permanent placement fees that were one-time payments of anywhere from like $15,000 to $40,000 per fee. Why isn't everybody doing this? Why isn't everybody getting rich off of this process? Why isn't everybody successful at this? I mean, as you can see from my story, getting momentum takes some work, right? Nobody's just going to hand you money just because you started a recruiting agency. It's going to take some work to build up that momentum. And for me, I had to do the work of discovering an in-demand niche where I could become a big fish in a small pond really quickly. And I did the work of going door to door. I did whatever it took to become successful. And once I did that, the hard work paid off and the momentum took off. You are also going to have to do that hard work. You're going to have to do the legwork of figuring out what it is that the market really needs and where you can position yourself inside of it in an ideal way for that little corner of the market. And by the way, if you're not sure what niche to go into, that's totally normal. And I get it. And I've been there. I was in that exact same boat. I would have loved to have somebody like myself to talk to at that time. That's why we exist at Seven Figure Staffing. We help dozens and dozens of new entrepreneurs in this space launch the right way. And I'd be happy to have a discussion with you to determine what angle you should take for getting the fastest start possible in this business. So if you'd like some consulting or some insight or some help, I would encourage you, just send me a message on LinkedIn, send me an email at ryan@sevenfigurestaffing.com, and we can kick off that conversation. And by the way, in the meantime, check out our free resources. They'll come in handy for you for launching your new business. You can go to sevenfigurestaffing.com and check those out for free, and I'll see you on the next video.